Internet, we need to talk about your addiction to the leak culture.
This video is sponsored by Silverstone, the leader in small form factor power supplies for over 10 years. The SX1000R Platinum is the company's SFX 12V 4.0 update to the pioneering SX1000 Platinum released in 2020. It now includes the Gen 5 12-volt high power connector along with ATX 3.0 performance updates and quieter operation. Pick up the SX1000R Platinum today and give your small form factor PC the power supply it needs to tackle the latest CPUs and GPUs.
Hey Internet, Gordon with PCWorld here with special guest Stephen Burke of Gamers Nexus.
How's it going?
Great, great. And by the way, go over there, like and subscribe, click that bell button on the Gamers Nexus, and buy some of those t-shirts to support the fantastic work Steve and his team are doing. But I want to talk to Steve about something I actually talked to him about a few years ago, but It feels like it's gotten worse because the leak culture today is so good, sometimes actually really accurate, still, of course, obviously really inaccurate sometimes, that it feels like it's gotten a little too much, and it feels like we need to just ratchet it back a little bit. Yeah? Do you agree? Or
I agree, and I just remembered the part we talked about years ago was actually, I think we were talking about the possibility of manufacturers self-generating leaks. I think that's the topic we did.
Oh, right. Are they leaking it themselves, right?
Right, yes. I don't remember what our conclusion was. I think it was probably a wishy-washy sometimes, who knows, but...
Yeah, they can't, I mean, for a public company, they can't legally do it. Right. Someone's going to get in trouble.
Right.
But so this is my, if you're a Big Lebowski fan, so if you don't know, go watch The Big Lebowski.
First, and then come back to this video.
So basically,
in a few hours.
Yes, and then you will understand that if you want to leak your product, but you can't do it because you will get in trouble by lawyers suing you for leaking information, you find your dumbest employee and you give that person the hardware, and they run Geekbench. And an internet connection, and they run Geekbench, Ashes of the Singularity, maybe a 3D Mark, because they don't have the paid version, and then it's out there.
Yeah, and then you conduct an internal investigation, and you implement new training on handling hardware.
Yes.
And then you're not in trouble anymore.
But your number is up here, and your competitor's number is here, and you've done exactly what you did. But okay, I get it. We don't know, that's the history here, but I actually want to get into what I think is the thing that drives companies like AMD, NVIDIA, and Intel crazy, is that when the information leaks and they don't want it to leak. I will tell you, every time we talk to them, they say, we don't want this information to leak.
Right.
It drives everybody nuts. But today, it feels like the leaks have gotten so damn good.
They also, I don't know if this is worth getting too into the behind the scenes of, but they so don't want it to leak, the companies that we work with, that it actually really gets in the way of the job that people in press do. Because I don't know if this happens to you, but a lot of times it'll be watermarked slides. So like new product launch, they've got whatever, $349.99, some specs, and then it's got PCWorld, 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 PCWorld all over the slide. And a lot of times they don't remove those watermarks until like 24 hours before embargo lift.
Even shorter.
Or even shorter. Yeah. And it gets to the point where they're almost sabotaging legitimate coverage for something that will inevitably leak anyway, or already has. I feel like a lot of the times we're in the room for the thing, and maybe an hour before the event starts, it's already on the internet.
Right.
Which is fine, because you can still provide really cool value being at an event, talking to engineers. But anyway, yeah, the companies jump through all kinds of hoops to try and control it, and it clearly doesn't work. So for us, you just kind of work with it. But
yeah, it does, because it's a if you're looking at a 6 a.m. launch on Monday, and they give you the unwatermarked slides 4 hours before, 6 hours before.
Oh, you're screwed. Like, you can't do anything with it.
Yeah, you can't. You're not going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and change everything.
Re-render and upload and everything. And that's a different topic. I sent AMD a pretty large email at the 7600 launch, and I think the word I used was disrespectful regarding the slide on watermarking issue.
Right.
But as far as like leak accuracy and culture, it seems to me that, so obviously there's big business in leaks, and it's so big that now entire organizations can exist basically only on the back of leaks, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And also interesting because I don't know that they necessarily leave the door open too much for getting into reviews, because maybe through back channels, but a company will obviously never, like NVIDIA would never intentionally sample, say, video cards or a similar site just because of the relationship.
Right.
But I don't know, as far as the has it gone too far question, is that the or how do you, what value do you give it as a viewer maybe? And
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point, because, and I want to say, I respect all the people who really do the leaks that do it well. The ones that are just batshit wrong all the time, it doesn't matter. Those are just the ones that are really good.
Yeah.
I respect they're doing their job as what they see their job.
And I think that's fine. And I do think video cards actually does an excellent job the majority of the time. Like their accuracy is pretty good. If you're a leak reporter, I think it becomes a response. Well, I mean, you don't have to, but to keep at least your brand credibility up, it becomes a responsibility to vet the leaks.
Right.
And it seems like video cards does a pretty good job of that. So I don't have a problem with the reporting of it. I do think I have a problem with, as you open the video, the extent to which the internet runs with that report.
Well, let me tell you, I'm not buying this next CPU because I know the one that's after it is going to be a 40% IPC increase.
Right.
And then I know NVIDIA next GPU is going to be this, so that's, to me, leaks always used to be kind of like, oh wow, it's pretty cool, it sounds cool, we'll see when it gets here, maybe not.
Right.
But now people are like planning builds around it and actually getting into arguments about this is going to be a 30%, well, AMD is going to have 40%, and they're like...
I think that's really interesting because it gets into a scenario where it allows for greater... I'm just waiting for the moped to pass. It allows for... It's the ambiance.
In Type A, yeah.
Yeah. It allows for greater disappointment, I think, for people who do build an entire plan around something that doesn't exist yet. And that maybe feeds some of the letdowns in the industry sometimes, where it's like company launches it. I'm trying to remember an example of this. AMD has had some, definitely on the CPU side a few years ago. I don't remember which ones, but where the product, you look at it, it's like this is actually pretty okay, if not good. But people get was it Ryzen 3000 that the rumor was 5 gigahertz?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that was it. I remember there were, not everyone, but there was a good amount of posts where people were so let down and upset because it wasn't 5 gigahertz, despite it actually being really competitive.
Right.
The 7900 XTX was going to be a 4090.
That's right. Yeah.
That was a recent one.
That's an excellent example as well.
Yeah, and that to me, for the companies, it's terrible because now they have mismanaged expectations in a way because the leaks have built it up, and now everybody's let down, and then it makes a worse product than if the leak hadn't occurred. So.
Yeah. So then, from a consumer standpoint, I mean, if there's any the question of what do you do? What are the action items? I guess as a consumer, if you read the leaks for fun, for some learning about what's going on in the industry, but you stop short of trying to this is, I guess, what drives me crazy is when I see people on Reddit trying to extrapolate performance based on like CUDA core or stream processor count or something. Like, well, this one's 20% more, and based on the 20% jump between this card and the other card that exists, we can extrapolate that the new card will be this positioning. And then we're sitting there sometimes even with the hardware looking at it like, oh man, they're not going to be happy with the numbers we have right now.
Yeah, and it's bad because sometimes like the leak will be like, oh, you know what, this next generation card will have 80% uplift, and of course that information is based on the valid information of ray tracing performance in this one game at this resolution, and
with DLSS 3 or whatever.
With DLSS 3, and yes, that's valid, but
you lack the entire context of that number.
Right.
And that's where the mismanaged expectations come in.
Right.
Do leaks make you angry? Is it part of what drives your shouting at the camera every time you open your live stream podcast?
I don't actually, and again, I think I'm with Steve here. I don't have any problems with people reporting the leaks. I think it's just that people put too much faith in them. That's what makes me angry. Because that whole grain of salt thing, everybody says, like, you might as well not even say it because everybody says it so much.
It's a platitude, right?
It's a platitude. So that's what kind of gets me, because people are absolutely sure those leaks are correct.
Right.
And I just don't.
Well, there's one for 7,000. I don't remember if it was X3D or just 7,000, but Ryzen, where the price is leaking actually a couple days, if I remember correctly, before launch, were about $50 off per SKU. And that was like really close. And I would say out of all the numbers to limit belief or faith in, it's probably pricing. As the 7600 excellently illustrates, because it was like 24 hours or something before launch or whatever, and they're calling us like, hey, the price is lower now, and that's fine, but if as a consumer you see leaks about a certain price, they're almost always off.
Yeah, because that is the last thing that is said, right?
Yeah, and like Jensen famously sets them backstage before going on for a keynote.
Right.
So if he doesn't even know, then no one else knows either.
Right. So when anybody's assisting, those prices are what it's going to be at. That's what kind of drives me crazy. Is people too. It's fun, and again, I do it because I love talking about it too. We all love the hardware, so we want to talk about it. It's interesting. It sort of helps us kind of like understand where the current parts are, where it's headed. But I'm certainly not going to put so much faith in it that when it changes, I'm going to be angry or upset.
I think we should talk about it from our side, where if we're going to complain about leaks and putting trust in them and whatever, both of us will report on leaks. And I don't think, at least for GN, we're not typically the source of them. It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe true for you as well. But we report on them, and so to address the inherent nature of being a little bit of a hypocrite with complaining about leaks and then also reporting them, I think it comes down to a compromise on how do you handle it. Responsibility.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
And that's tough, because if I'm speaking fully openly, I actually don't really like covering leaks at all. But then strategically, you look at what's the news of the week or whatever, depending on how frequently you do your news show. And sometimes, like, there's some really cool stories, but I can't get people to watch these stories about smaller companies unless I have an anchor. So that's normally our viewpoint. This is like the full transparency. How do we decide what leaks to report on? It's typically, I have this really great episode, I don't have a good title, and then there's a 4050 Ti or whatever, let's put that in the headline, let's try and talk about it, we'll flag it as a rumor in the time bars, we'll say it's a rumor, and then you have an anchor.
Right.
So strategically there's...
And you're basically reporting the leak that's been, somebody else has talked about it.
Yeah,
you're reporting it.
Yeah, and you do the classic journalist approach of according to, as stated by...
Yes, and it's fair to do that, I think. But you're right, we are being a little hypocritical there. Let me ask you another thing. Should we be reporting more leaks? Because clearly you and I, we've known people for a long time. We can call somebody up and they'll say like, yeah, they'll confirm something.
Right.
Is that something we should do? Do you think that's...
Sometimes I do that. It depends what it is. So if there's a leak, I think is... So I guess there's two types of leaks from our position as reviewers. There's leaks that we know to be fact because we already have the information, but we're holding until the date that we can report on it. And I think this is a totally different discussion, but sometimes people think embargoes are like evil or whatever. I actually think they're good. It allows us to have the right amount of time to focus on building a good content piece.
Right.
Because otherwise, PCWorld, GN, LMG, everyone, you're all going to race to the bottom. Who can get it up fastest? So an embargo allows you to build quality. But getting back to it, there's leaks that we know to be true, and then there's leaks we're not sure about. And leaks we know to be true, between the lines, is typically if I'm reporting a leak, I know that it's right. If I don't know it's right, we make it really clear. And, and they're pretty wide lines for people to see, but you have to stay within the confines of the agreement, which is you cannot report to be fact what you know to be fact. You can, however, report someone else reporting a rumor, and whether you know it's fact or not is totally irrelevant because that's not part of the agreement. But then leaks you don't know to be true, if I'm really not sure about it, we just strip it from the story. You remember that giant 4090 class cooler that looked like an air conditioning unit? that popped up a while ago.
Yeah.
The first time it popped up, our news writer asked me about it, and we felt it was just so unreasonably, like comically large, it couldn't possibly be real, and we didn't report on it. We eventually did later when it surfaced again. So I think there's like a responsibility in the vetting process.
Yeah, no, because really, your credibility adds to, and my credibility, when we talk about it, it sort of adds to the credibility of the leak itself.
Right.
So, and that's that balancing. Like, I personally don't like to try to go out and ask for leaked information because I'm so used to being under an embargo.
Yeah.
And also being part of the reviews process, you have to be able to, not accidentally leak information by yourself. And it's always better just not to know sometimes than to screw it up.
Yeah, and we don't go hunting for leaks. We'll try to confirm one sometimes if we're going to report on it. Just like, okay, so before we put our brand behind this and create an expectation that isn't reality, let me at least see if I can get someone off record like, yeah, no, that looks right. But I think for me personally, I prefer to focus on, like you're saying, working with actual hardware, actual numbers, actual testing. It's more fun, it's more interesting for me. I think leaks are fun for a certain personality, but for me, it's difficult because I like working off of more factual stuff.
Yeah, it just makes it easier because the analysis you're doing is rooted in, actually testing it.
Right.
It's a different game when you're sort of working the leak side of the aisle.
Yeah. So is there something that you think those of us in the more reviews-focused media, so like PCWorld, GN, whoever else, do you think there's a way that we can improve the coverage of leaks as third parties, as people reporting on reports of leaks? Because it's part of, it's people want it, but what would you say would make it better to strike that balance of being responsible between not covering them at all and going too crazy? And maybe commenters can jump in with, I'm sure commenters have a lot of opinions on this.
Yes.
And I'm sure none of them were formulated more than 10 seconds ago. So I look forward to reading them.
Oh boy, I think there are some things that you just have to talk about. Like if there is a leak that, oh my God, XX is going to be so much faster or so much cheaper or so much more expensive, I think those are okay to talk about because, whenever we try to talk about it, we always say, look, this, I don't know, this could be totally wrong. But we just want to talk about it. We're going to analyze it, view it through our lens of kind of how we've seen it. And honestly, what I'll typically do is I'll reach out to the vendor, who's the target of the leak, and say, any comment? And we know what they're going to say. I'm not going to, it's the middle finger. We can't say anything. That's what they say. But you want to, you always give them that chance no matter what. You should always give them a chance.
Look over the next quote block that Adam edits in on.
Can he blur that out? He blurs that out.
No. There's a thumbnail.
Because the hardware vendors are like, no, we can't comment on the leak because that's verifying the leak. You see, we can't talk about it.
We reached out to NVIDIA for comments, and NVIDIA said,
go after yourself. Yes. So
quote Jensen Huang, CEO at NVIDIA.
But I've seen leaks that they've gotten so out of control that the vendors actually have to comment.
Yeah.
And because they have to, this is getting out of control.
That happened with I don't remember what one it was specifically. We had one like that not long ago where I'm trying to recall it, but it was either NVIDIA or AMD reached out to us at one point, and they were like, hey, so before, it was AMD. AMD reached out, and it's someone I know pretty well at AMD, so they're a trustworthy source, and the contact said, hey, I know you film news normally on Fridays, so this thing that everyone's talking about, just so you know, it's not even close to accurate. And I was like, okay, so they're trying to manage expectations because they're actually fearful of this information because it's setting them up for failure if people have too high expectations.
Yeah. There was also a leak with, going all the way back, remember Intel was considering soldered on desktop parts.
Yeah,
Broadwell, it was the Broadwell Edge. And it definitely took on a life of its own, and they had to comment too. They absolutely flat out had to quash it. So.
Right. I do think in that case, within reason, that one starts to make sense to put some more noise behind, just because it's very concerning if it is true. I think the responsible way to do it for people who try to brand themselves in the way we do is probably to reach out and say, is this true, before you say it publicly. And I know you've done that a lot, where we'll see like someone leaks something and PCWorld,
Right.
Has a comment from the manufacturer. And if they have no comment, then I think it's fair game to report on it.
Yeah.
And if they have a comment, you report on that, and you kind of disqualify the leak if it is disqualified. But something like that, it gets outside of performance and into like consumer protection, where I actually just think that BGA soldered CPUs on boards would be terrible for the environment and everyone who lives in it, for DIY anyway. So that one, it makes sense if there's a hint of accuracy to put pressure on the companies early and publicly.
Right.
So that they go, okay, maybe it was going to be true, but we're actually just going to kill this whole thing and say it wasn't true.
And I can tell you in that particular case, that was at least from where I learned that information myself, that was outsiders definitely wanting to not have that happen.
Yeah, okay.
And they thought it would happen. They wanted to exert pressure on them, and they were afraid it was going to. And honestly, I think it worked, because I'm sure somebody inside was like, why don't we just solder these, like make them like laptop motherboards?
Right.
Somebody somewhere thought it was a good idea, and again, somewhere else in the company said, no, that's the dumbest thing ever. In the end, probably all the bad publicity might have pushed it to. So,
yeah.
but that's an internal, external leaks where it was like, again, it's interesting because they're using the press, the coverage to sort of
battle each other.
And we've seen this with companies over the years where some part of the company may not like the other part of the company, and they go out of the way to punch the other part. It's bizarre, but it happens.
It's very bizarre, but it's also very like corporate. Yeah, like it depends on the culture of the company, but some companies have that almost like backstabbing, ladder climbing mentality.
Right.
And yeah, I guess if it escalates, it exits internal and becomes weaponizing the press. So. And
it works too, because if you can get enough people with their torches and pitchforks to say this is a bad idea.
And I don't think it's a bad thing either. If someone really believes, especially internally, sees a direction that a company's going, they try to go the proper channels and have the discussions and prevent, say, some anti-consumer behavior, and it doesn't work. I think if they then go to a trusted press source who's not going to get them fired and weaponize it, as long as that press outlet is responsible and does its own due diligence to make sure both sides have their say, I think that's an okay approach, because it especially if it's a more noble goal like protecting the consumer,
right?
As opposed to say some like product naming debate internally that no one gives a shit about.
Yeah, so. But I mean, oftentimes it's for somebody's interest.
Yes,
because they're definitely, no matter what, anytime somebody leaks you something, it's to help them. Nobody leaks. Oh, this is gonna cut my budget by having this. Never. So
yeah, and so I know for a fact as well that some leakers, like the sources, do try to get money for leaks.
Yeah.
Obviously, because we've had people approach us. Actually, so for a story, I was entertaining one, and the reason is, we had a guy reach out to us. He said, "Hey, I have a photo. Here's a cropped-in version. Do you want to buy this leak?" I looked at it. I called the manufacturer. I told them about that. I said, "Hey, I have a story idea. We want to buy this leak and just see where it goes." And I think the guy got a sense from whatever email I sent that that we didn't want to buy the leak for the leak. We want to do more with it, because he stopped responding. And I just want to see how much, because he said, "We want to sell you this leak," or "I want to sell you this leak." And he said, "Tell me how much you want to pay." And I responded, was like, "Well, I mean, I don't know. I haven't bought a leak before. What did you have in mind?" And we wanted to run the story of like start to finish. It's kind of like our factory tours, except it's how is a leak made? like how is baby leak made in the industry?
That would be actually really interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's a different chain there, right? Because there's people legitimately, they want to leak it. Motivations are generally because they have their own interests.
Right.
They may have an axe to grind. You have people who want them to leak it because they think it's legitimately good for people, because they think that information should be out there. You have people that love to leak
Just
because they cannot keep a secret.
Right.
They will rat you out to everybody. Oh, don't tell anybody because I really like her. Oh, really? Because I'm gonna go tell her right now, right? And then you got the ones that just they want to sell it. There really is.
Yeah.
There's
monetary motivation.
And obviously, in the tier of leaks, those are the ones I think most of us would not disagree with because I've never paid for a leak. I never will, but it just seems like it's.
It at least makes logical sense if it's like, okay, well, I can understand the motive when someone's like, I need money. My friend works at company. My friend told me a thing. Let me see if I can sell it.
Yeah.
So at least that one's rational in a sense, but yeah.
But I would love to see. That's very interesting because to see the entire how a leak is made is actually really fascinating to me. You got to do it.
Yeah. Well,
can you do it? I guess.
We have a couple things in the works still on that topic.
Okay.
So.
Spoilers.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know when we'll be done with it, but we're doing some pretty interesting stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Anyway, this could go on for hours. I'm going to cut it off here. Again, go to Gamers Nexus YouTube channel, click like and subscribe. I got Stephen Burke here. We'll have more videos from him from wonderful Computex 2023.
And subscribe to PCWorld, where you already are.
And also, last word of advice, internet, don't put so much faith in those leaks. You look at it like so-and-so celebrity has bought a house somewhere, or so-and-so celebrity is dating someone. That's it. And that's
right.
Don't like, oh my God, I need to like plan my entire 2 system builds for this. I think that's just
yeah. Limit the time investment in something that is uncertain.
Yeah.
Generally good advice.
Well, thanks, Steve. Back to you. The internet never disappoints you in disappointing you.
It's okay. All right. That I agree with.
Because it's just like there's always somebody.
I was gonna wait to say it until you got to the second half of the sentence.
There's always somebody like, okay, you have to just say the shitty shit thing because you have to be shitty, right? It's just like